What are some of the main risk factors that you identify these days with children on the internet, Mark?
Our children are actually much more sophisticated than we realize because unfortunately they're being trained at a much earlier age. And and I hate to say this because when I say this, I personally get really sad. But I'm going to now bring up something that most parents and most of us don't want to accept. Our children are losing their innocence. They are literally losing their innocence at earlier and earlier ages. And when you hand the smart device to your children, you're handing now with AI and ChatGPT, you're handing not just the world's knowledge, but now the ability to have an artificial intelligence combine the world's knowledge. And if you don't think that's going to reduce their innocence instantly, it will. Now, the fact is, libraries reduced the innocence in the old days, and ever since we started keeping our history on paper and now digitally, there has been all kinds of technologies that have come around, like TV was considered to be a demon technology, so was radio, and now so is social media. So I am not going to overreact in those ways. But just like all of those transport systems of the past, the laws and the government and the societal understanding of what's occurring had to catch up. And we're in a very young stage with this hyperactive, incredible technology era that we're in, where things are just coming together so fast. And I think ultimately it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all ends up in the long term, because you see, we have an acceleration going on. If you guys have not noticed, what is occurring is we have more information coming in, and it's making all of us in some ways smarter. But in many ways, because remember, we go back to the bias that I told you about, and we only want to see what we like, it's also making us dumber. And that's the strangest part of all of this, because if we are only going to look at things that we like, then ultimately at some point, we're not going to be looking at true information. And that I'm sad about. And I'm not calling anyone dumb. I'm saying it makes us dumber because it deprives us maybe of really useful information. And then we might say and do things that in the future we might not be so proud of. But we, at that moment, are going down the funnel that we created by our own bias, teaching the algorithm what we liked. And therefore we created the news that one day might actually hurt us, our own
Wow.
ones.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is maybe more for adults, but I'm sure this applies to children as well. What would one do to, I'm not saying just be open-minded to everything, but I'm saying to get out of your own funnel. How would one do that?
Well, I think what you have to realize is when you start to realize how funnels are created, then you start to realize that you have a little bit of responsibility to interject into your feed an alternative feed. So for me, I listen to Republican and Democratic and centrist and progressive and radical news. I listen to all of it because, frankly, if I'm going to draw any conclusion, I want to hear everyone's perspective. And you know what's really interesting, guys? When you start to listen to both sides, you start to hear them all screeching. And then you start to dilute it and you start to really listen. Start to realize all of us really want to be in the center. We just want to be heard. We want our side to have a chance to actually get what we want. And unfortunately, in a digital sense of the word, we're not getting what we want. And most of us don't even realize that when we sign a user agreement, which I absolutely feel needs to be changed to human agreement. Because if we have a human agreement, then we're treating people as human beings. And we need to treat anyone who's interacting with a digital system that could have AI associated with it as human with human rights. And this is where humanity comes into the title of my book. we have lost our humanity because we are treated instantaneously by these companies as users. I don't want to be a user.
Oof.
I want to learn, guys. I want to be taught. I want technology to be trusted so that way I could actually learn more and apply more of what I've learned to the world and create cooler technology. But unfortunately today, I can't even trust the science channels on YouTube any longer because they still go down the rabbit hole of whatever I was just watching.
Yeah.
And that means that I have to be very careful what I'm digesting. So I have to back up usually. And then I have to go and verify my sources before I actually get one of my terms in the book is genned up. Genned up is when we take an overwhelming amount of information in and we get all angry about it. We get genned up and we explode into the world with our knowledge. But most of the time, it's our bias. It's our made up information.
Oof, that's so good. I want to, last night I was thinking more about your concept that I had read and heard you talk about being called a user. And it kind of finally clicked last night. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that, but I realized what you have been talking about this whole time and how much it matters. And just to summarize it, when you use a social platform, they make you agree to their terms. And normally most of us just press I agree and we don't read it. Now, in those agreements, they say you, the user, agree to use the platform. So another word for platform, you can replace that with you are a user of our company, our product. So you're not a human, you are a user. You are a consumer of our product. Now that's accurate, right? But what you're saying is that when we sign the agreement saying we are a user of their product or platform, it removes our human rights and it makes us simply not only just consumers, but actual users, similar to in the connotation of an addict, right? So I want you to explain that more and also your solution to it because it's really cool.
Yes. So think about it. We sign a user agreement today. And when you go into a user agreement, it gives you terms and conditions of many things that the technology company has rights to and very few rights that we actually get assigned back. Now, I want you guys to think about this concept right now. I am right now on TikTok with Kim, and we're doing this live feed. We're generating television type content. It's a little cruder, but the truth is this is a piece of content. And right now, TikTok has got people in the comment section watching this content that's being generated. And TikTok becomes more valuable every time we do this. So we are actually creating for TikTok value by just coming on. Now, I know when you become an influencer on TikTok, they will pay you back. And there are other forms of monetization, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all of us now. Not the few influencers, because it's actually a very few that make it to the monetization level. I'm talking about all of us. So that content for them is there to be monetized. That's their content that they can actually store forever. And that is your likeness and all of your content that's on their property, like this is becoming TikTok's property. And ultimately, our rights in that user agreement are being assigned over to these companies. So what about a concept that when we're doing all of this, we acknowledge there's a value. We're human beings, not AI. We're not artificial. We're not deep fakes doing this. We're human beings. And don't we immediately have an assigned value? Does this not equate to some intrinsic currency? And that currency should be bidirectional. So from my perspective, just having a human agreement that come to terms with the fact that we create human asset value for TikTok, we that are talent, that's an asset. And we need to be treated as talent, like a movie star would be treated as in a film, right? A movie star creates the likeness and the image and the video and does their stuff, and they create the vehicle that the director and producer and everyone else benefits from. So that's why they have unique rights in every studio agreement, because their image is going out to the world. So I just want everyone to think about, this is way deeper than just saying user versus human. It's really assigning human rights to what we're doing.